Hi, my name is Brooke Moore, and today I'm going to be discussing student literacy engagement and the shift to something new. First, I want you to take a few seconds and think about what does literacy engagement mean to you? And how do you think that we could work together as educators, as researchers, and as scholars to make a shift into something new? All right. McCombs and Al says classroom practices within each domain affect learning motivation and development across the lifespan. In school settings, these practices are a reflection of the beliefs, characteristics, dispositions, and practices of teachers. Although programs and practices do not have a certain form or look a particular way, a number of qualities define learner centeredness from students' perspectives and maximize their learning and motivation. Now, I want you to take a minute to think about what types of engagement and motivation techniques do you use as a teacher? If you're not a teacher, you may think about techniques you believed to have been used on you personally in school. Why did you complete your work? What kept you wanting to complete it? You can jot it down with paper and pencil, or you can keep a little mental list in your head. Personally, for me, it was the fear of punishment or a bad grade, or it was because of reward. I'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and brainstorm. As I discussed, mine was the fear of punishment or a bad grade. That brings us to extrinsic motivation. So, what is extrinsic motivation? Well, according to dictionary.org, an external incentive to engage in a specific activity, especially motivation arising from the expectation of punishment or reward, like completing a disliked chore in exchange for payment, is extrinsic motivation. At an elementary school level, we often see this used through a sticker chart, candy, treasure box visit, etc. Often in literacy, teachers may give a reward for how many books or how many pages you read each night, and it often stems from external factors. On the other side, dictionary.org states that intrinsic motivation is defined as an incentive to engage in a specific activity that derives from pleasure in the activity itself. For example, a genuine interest in a studied subject. This often also refers to the reasons within yourself that you want to succeed or complete your work. Is it because of a personal goal? Do you want to become a doctor? Or is it because you're genuinely interested in the material and curious to know more? Now that we've discussed the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic factors, I want you to refer back to the list that you made in your head or on paper earlier about the types of motivation and engagement techniques you have used or seen. This time, I want you to try and categorize them into extrinsic or intrinsic. How many do you have? Is there one of more over the other? I'm very interested to see if more people have extrinsic motivators or personal techniques that they've used over intrinsic. I'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and do so. Now that we've discussed motivation techniques from an educator's standpoint, I'd like you to think about what motivated you as a student or what motivates you to complete your work today. Is it intrinsic or extrinsic? As a first grade teacher, personally, I would say mine is a little bit of both. I want my I want to succeed as a teacher and to see my students' growth and progress, but I also want them to learn and gain new knowledge. And they are my extrinsic factor that motivates me as well. Go ahead and pause the video or take a few seconds to complete this. Think about what keeps you going as a worker. Now let's discuss current practices of engagement and motivation. Whether motivation is coming from the teacher, the environment, or some sort of incentive, extrinsic factors play a role in the student's learning. They are coming from other places that are not within the actual student's desire and will to want to learn. When discussing the logistics of what is to be considered as an external motivator, we take into consideration the role these influences may have on different ages. External sources of influence on extrinsic reading motivation may vary depending on the age group. Younger children are influenced primarily by their parents, whereas older children are also influenced by schools and peers. The role of instrumental motives may differ as well. But how do we begin to inspire kids to find that motivation from within? And do they always work? According to Cho 2010, typical intrinsic motivators in reading are interest, curiosity, challenge, social connections, and self-efficacy. Similarly, a number of studies suggested that reading instruction that engages students in reading, 1, links outside literacy activities to reading, 2, uses diverse texts, 3, provides authentic reasons to read, 4, promotes collaborative learning, offers choices and options, and 6, challenges students. So you might be wondering, why is intrinsic motivation so important? The short reason is because not all students benefit from extrinsic factors and may not have a desire to learn at all. But if we can engage them, what are the benefits to this? Beiruz-Momimi discusses this point.
Intrinsic motivation is the desire to engage in an activity due to the fact that the activity itself is enjoyable. There is no need for external rewards or punishment. Some of you probably also remember how when you were younger, you would spend countless number of hours playing your favorite video games instead of doing that really boring math homework. In fact, I have a confession. This is exactly how I became really, really good at playing both Super Mario and Mortal Kombat. I learned all the moves in about a day and a half, including those complicated backflips that you get in Mortal Kombat. But the reality is, at the end of the day, I had to drop first year physics because apparently none of those complicated moves have anything to do with real world physics. Now, that's a clear example of intrinsic motivation. The activity continues without the need for any external factors. In fact, sometimes the activity persists, the desire and the engagement persist despite the threat of punishment and at great expense to individuals. This is how top performers are able to maintain their dedication for decades and achieve that level of mastery in life. This is what is used to reach what is called the state of flow in psychology, or normally known as being in the zone. Now, you may be thinking, why does it matter if individuals are motivated via carrots and sticks versus internally? Well, it turns out that it matters a great deal because over 40 years of research has demonstrated that individuals who are intrinsically motivated perform better. They're more resilient. They experience less burnout, and most notably, they show greater life and job satisfaction.
So, after Beiruz-Momimi talked about intrinsic motivation, he made some good points about how important it is that we motivate students in the successes that it has shown. But how do we make the shift as educators from using extrinsic factors to motivating in a new way? So let's discuss a shift from current practices to something new. So first, I believe that we should dive in as students into students as individuals. We need to find out student interests. How can we get individual students engaged? After we look at the student as an individual person, we can zoom out and look at them as a whole class. So it would be important to conduct a study on what engages and motivates students intrinsically and collect data. This leads us to our next steps. After looking at the various amounts of research, we can conclude that the next steps in this process would be to further explore the multiple facets of intrinsic motivation. From the researchers discussed, we have been shown that most methods to motivating students is extrinsically, whether it is involving the use of rewards like stickers or candy, or to get students to want to please you as a teacher instead of wanting themselves to succeed. These measures do not always appeal to students. It is how we inspire and motivate the students that want to work from within and to better themselves that we need to reach out to and not let slip between the cracks. It's time to begin a study on students and what engages them and how to keep them in that zone of engagement. While it may be difficult to begin a research of this magnitude, it is crucial we find the time and resources to do so in order to promote student success and achievement, academically and socially. Thank you for listening today. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out via email or phone. Thank you.